Dance and Shackle of Borrowed Crown by Adedeji Adesemoye. To the glory of God and in loving memory of Pa Chief Moses A. Adesemoye, late Baba Ijo, St. Paul Anglican, Archdeaconry Church, Ododi Idanre, Ondo State, Nigeria. First published 2025 by Plural Crown Limited. Number 3. Nile Crescent, Sun City Estate, Abuja, FCT, Nigeria. Introduction. The Dance and Shackle of Borrowed Crown is a captivating tale of beauty, ambition, and the unseen chains of manipulation. Asake, a vibrant young woman, is lured by the charm of Adulthood, a mysterious suitor who promises a life of grandeur. But beneath the allure lies a web of deception that binds her to an unyielding fate. Through vivid storytelling and profound symbolism, this book explores the consequences of choices, the allure of appearances, and the courage needed to break free from life's invisible shackles. A timeless journey of self-discovery and reflection awaits every reader. About the author, Adedeji Adesemoye, a retired director of the Central Bank of Nigeria, is a renowned author with over 33 years of experience in finance, housing, and development. He is also the author of Forged by Trials, Bound by Destiny, a captivating work that reflects his passion for storytelling. His literary works explore political allegories, ethical issues, and youth-focused themes, blending African values, culture, and religious principles to educate and inspire younger generations. A strategic thought leader, Adesemoye's professional legacy includes transformative reforms in housing finance, advocacy for inclusive development, and the integration of technology-driven solutions in banking and housing. Through his storytelling and creative use of animation, he continues to empower future leaders and champion African values and culture. Preface. The title. The Dance and Shackle of Borrowed Crown carries profound symbolism, weaving a tale that reflects both personal choices and societal realities. The dance serves as a metaphor for a young woman's journey when she reaches the age of marriage. It represents her movement through life's opportunities, but also her decision to step away from a good environment where she might have cultivated the wisdom and foresight to navigate the uncertainties of the future. Her arrogance, fueled by beauty and the attention of many suitors, blinded her to the risks of neglecting stability, ultimately leading to her downfall and pushing her into an unfamiliar and challenging path with Adulthood. The shackles represent the invisible chains of manipulation. Adulthood, through his spell, ensnared her mind, clouding her reasoning and binding her will. She became a prisoner, unable to recognize the depth of her entrapment or reclaim her independence. The borrowed crown is a powerful metaphor for leadership, symbolizing the allure of authority and grandeur. Just as the woman admired the crown, captivated by its beauty, without realizing it concealed only a skull, so too do many citizens choose their leaders based on appearances and promises. They fail to see the hidden agendas and the subtle enslavement embedded in their choices, often finding themselves bound by the very systems they helped create. This story draws a parallel between individual experiences and collective societal actions, urging readers to reflect on the consequences of their decisions, whether in relationships or leadership. It highlights the importance of discernment, wisdom, and the courage to look beyond the surface to uncover deeper truths. Chapter 1. The Marketplace Encounter. Asake, the beauty of the village. Asake was no ordinary woman. Her beauty was the talk of the village, her every move a silent dance that captured the attention of men and women alike. Her skin was rich like the earth after rain, smooth and glowing under the sun. Her laughter, rare though it was, sounded like music carried by the wind, and her eyes, deep, dark pools of mystery, held the secrets of 1,000 moons. Despite all this attention, Asake was unshaken. Men had come from near and far, bearing gifts, singing her praises, begging for her hand in marriage. But she found them predictable, their words shallow and their hearts unworthy. She longed for something deeper, something untold, a story yet to be written. On this particular day, the village marketplace was bustling. People moved around her like the tides of a restless ocean, trading, laughing, and gossiping. The smell of fresh produce and cooking spices mingled in the air, the sound of bartering voices creating a symphony of daily life. Asake walked through it all, seemingly detached, her thoughts elsewhere. Yet, she felt something different in the air today, a sense of change, of something significant waiting just beyond her reach. The Yu's enchanting arrival. It was then that Asake first saw him. Standing by a simple stall in the marketplace, Adelyu seemed to draw attention without effort. His charm was quiet but undeniable, his presence like a ripple disturbing the surface of calm waters. He was tall, with skin the color of rich ebony, and his smile warm but edged with a certain mischief played across his lips, as if he knew secrets the rest of the world had yet to discover. For the first time in her life, Asake felt an unfamiliar pull. This man was unlike any she had encountered before. He moved with a grace and confidence that made the world around him seem dull. But it wasn't just his appearance that intrigued her. There was something beneath the surface, a mystery that called out to her, urging her to step closer. Breaking all unspoken rules of village courtship, Asake did something unheard of. She approached him. It was she who crossed the space between them, weaving through the crowd until she stood before him. Their eyes met, and for a moment the busy marketplace seemed to fall silent. Time itself seemed to pause. Adelju's eyes sparkled with recognition, as though he had been waiting for this moment. His smile deepened as he spoke, his voice rich and smooth. "Ah, the beauty of Asake graces my humble stall," he said, his tone playful yet respectful. Normally, Asake would have dismissed such flattery, but there was something in his words that caught her attention. His voice was like honey, but underneath there was the hint of something deeper, a promise of adventure, of unknown paths waiting to be traveled. She found herself speaking before she could stop herself. "Let us be husband and wife," she said boldly, breaking every tradition of courtship. Adelju's smile faltered for a brief second before his eyes softened. His response was direct, unflinching. "I cannot marry you," he said, his voice still calm but now edged with something deeper. "I am Ori, a stranger here. My place lies beyond the blue sea, Odo Aro, and even farther after the Red Sea, Odo Ege. You see, we are not destined to be husband and wife." Asake, usually so sharp and discerning, was blinded by her sudden and overwhelming emotions. She refused to accept his words, her mind clouded by the pull of this mysterious man. Love had made her reckless, and she would have none of his reasoning. Lesson 1. The power of perception and influence. Learning point. Asake is admired by everyone, and this shows how individuals in positions of influence can be blindly idolized for their beauty, power, or charm. Practical application. We must learn not to be swayed by surface-level appearances or societal praise. True worth comes from within, and we should seek to understand people's values, not just their outward appeal. Chapter 2. The journey begins. Asake follows Adelju beyond the marketplace. Despite Adelju's clear warning, Asake was determined. She could not let this man, this mysterious force in her life, slip away. She followed him as he left the marketplace, walking just behind him through the winding paths of the village, her footsteps light but steady. As they walked, the familiar sights and sounds of the village began to fade. The bustling marketplace, the lively chatter of villagers, the warmth of the sun overhead, all were replaced by an eerie stillness. The path they took seemed to lead farther and farther away from the world she knew. Adelju did not stop her, though he spoke little. Every now and then he would glance back at her, his expression unreadable, as though he was waiting for her to turn back, to rethink her decision. But Asake's resolve only strengthened with every step. She could feel the pull of destiny, drawing her ever closer to the unknown. The crossing of the blue sea, Odo Aro. After what felt like days of walking, they reached the edge of the village's known world. Before them stretched the blue sea, Odo Aro, a vast, shimmering expanse that separated the familiar from the mysterious. The sea seemed to glow with an ethereal light, its waters whispering secrets that only the spirits could understand. Asake hesitated for the first time. She had heard tales of the blue sea, of its magic and its dangers. No one from her village had ever crossed it and returned to tell the tale. Yet here she was, standing at its edge, with Adeloju by her side. Adeloju turned to her, his expression serious now. "This is where most turn back," he said softly, his voice no longer playful. "Beyond this sea, there is no return to the life you knew." Asake met his gaze, her heart racing. She knew he was right, but the pull of the unknown, the promise of something greater, was stronger than her fear. She nodded silently, and together they stepped into a small boat that seemed to appear from nowhere, guided by unseen hands. As the boat glided across the shimmering waters, the air around them grew thick with magic. The sea whispered ancient secrets, and Asake felt her connection to the world she knew slipping away. But she did not look back. Her eyes remained fixed on Adeloju, the mysterious man who had captured her heart and led her into this strange new world. The passage through the Red Sea, Odo Eje. Their journey did not end at the Blue Sea. After crossing its mystical waters, they arrived at another, far more ominous sea, Odo Eje, the Red Sea. Its waters were dark and foreboding, stained with the color of blood. Legend spoke of this sea as a place of no return, where the spirits of the dead lingered and the souls of the lost wandered forever. Adeloju paused at the edge of the Red Sea, his expression unreadable. "This is the final passage," he said, his voice low and serious. "Once we cross this, there is no going back." Asake, her heart pounding, took a deep breath. She knew this was her last chance to turn back, to return to the safety of her village, to the life she once knew. But she also knew that if she turned back now, she would lose Adeloju forever, and with him, the chance for something far greater than herself. Without a word, she stepped forward, taking his hand. Together they waded into the dark waters of the Red Sea, its cold grip pulling at them, dragging them deeper into the unknown. Lesson: the danger of superficial attraction. Learning point: Asake is quickly drawn to Adeloju's borrowed charm, ignoring any deeper inquiry into who he truly is. Practical application: in relationships or any major decision, it's essential to dig beneath the surface. First impressions can be deceiving, and it's important to take time to truly understand someone's character before committing. Lesson 1. Heeding warnings. Learning point: Adeloju hints at his true nature, warning Asake subtly, but she ignores these signs. Practical application: always pay attention to warning signs or red flags. Whether in relationships or partnerships, when someone hints at future problems, it's wise to evaluate them carefully instead of dismissing them. Lesson 2. The beginning of uncertainty. Learning point: as they cross the first river, Asake is still enchanted by Adeloju, but she starts noticing slight changes in his appearance. Practical application: the early signs of change in behavior or circumstances should be treated seriously. Small inconsistencies can be indicative of larger issues to come, so it's important to stay observant. Lesson 3. The unveiling of deception. Learning point: as they pass through the second river, Adeloju returns more borrowed parts, and his true form begins to emerge. Practical application: deception. especially when based on lies or borrowed power, will eventually unravel. It's important to seek the truth early, rather than waiting until it's too late. Chapter 3. The Transformation. The First Signs of Trouble. As they moved beyond the Red Sea, strange things began to happen. The air grew thick with magic, and the landscape around them twisted and changed in ways that defied the natural order. Trees grew where none should have, the ground shifted under their feet, and the sky itself seemed to pulse with energy. Asake began to notice subtle changes in Adulthood as well. His confident demeanor remained, but there was something different about him, something unsettling. His movements were slower, less fluid, as though he were carrying a great weight. And though he still smiled at her, there was a shadow behind his eyes, a deep sadness that he could not hide. She asked him what was wrong, but he merely shook his head and said, "All will be revealed in time." Adulthood's borrowed body parts are returned. As they journeyed deeper into the unknown, the truth began to unravel. Adulthood's body, once whole and strong, began to show signs of decay. His hands, once so sure and steady, trembled and cracked as though they were made of clay. His eyes, once full of life, grew dull and hollow. Asake watched in horror as Adulthood slowly fell apart before her eyes. His body parts, it seemed, were not his own. They had been borrowed, and now the time had come to return them to their rightful owners. Piece by piece, Adulthood's borrowed body was stripped away, leaving behind only the essence of the man he once was. Asake confronts the skull. In the eerie silence of the strange land, Asake found herself face to face with the bare remnants of the man she had followed Adulthood's skull, hanging in the air as though held up by the will of some unseen force. Gone was the confident man who had charmed her in the marketplace, replaced by this spectral image of death. Her heart pounded as she tried to make sense of the surreal sight before her. She could still feel the connection to Adulthood, but now it was different, thinner, weaker, like a thread stretched to its limit. Yet even in this form, his presence was undeniable. The skull's hollow eyes seemed to watch her, as if waiting for her to speak. The air between them felt charged with energy, an unspoken challenge hanging in the space. "Adulthood," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Is this truly you?" The skull's hollow mouth moved, though no sound escaped at first. Then, slowly, a soft whisper filled the air around her, like wind through the trees. "Yes, Asake, it is I, but not as I once was. You see now the truth. I am not of this world. The man you met in the marketplace was only a mask, a shell I borrowed to walk among the living." Asake's breath caught in her throat as the reality of his words sank in. Her heart ached, but she could not bring herself to turn away from him. Instead, she stepped closer, her voice steady, though her body trembled. "Then why did you come? Why did you seek me?" The skull's expression did not change, it could not, but the air seemed to grow colder, as though the spirits around them were listening. "I sought you because you are not like the others," the skull whispered. "You are destined for more than the life you've known. But I was selfish. I should never have let you follow me." Asake clenched her fists, her resolve hardening despite the fear swirling in her chest. "You say it was selfish, yet you did not stop me. You wanted me to follow, didn't you?" The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken truths. Finally, the skull spoke again. "Yes, I wanted you to come with me, but now the journey ahead is yours alone to complete." Asake's mind raced. She had followed him this far, through seas that no one else dared to cross, into realms where magic twisted reality. But now, faced with the reality of his otherworldly nature, she wondered what she had truly been chasing all along. Yet her decision had been made the moment she crossed into the unknown. There was no turning back. She stepped forward again, her eyes locked on the floating skull. "Then tell me, Adeloju, what lies ahead? What is this destiny you speak of?" Before the skull could respond, the air around them shifted, and a new presence made itself known. The winds picked up, swirling around Asake, as if warning her of what was to come. Lesson 2. Facing Reality Learning Point. Asake begins to realize that Adeloju is not who he claimed to be, and the reality of her situation starts sinking in. Practical application. Accepting hard truths is better than living in denial. The sooner we confront reality, the sooner we can take action to change the situation or protect ourselves. Lesson 2. The Fall of Facades. Learning point. Adeloju's body parts are returned to their original owners, and his frightening true form is revealed to Asake. Practical application. Just as borrowed power and beauty cannot last forever, superficial qualities or deceitful actions will always come to light. Integrity is the only lasting foundation for trust and relationships. Lesson 3. The Importance of Accountability Learning Point. Asake now fully understands the consequences of her choices and must face the reality of her situation. Practical application. In life, we must take responsibility for our decisions and face the consequences. Accountability is essential for growth and avoiding similar mistakes in the future. Chapter 4. The Waist Beads of Captivity, the Binding with Waist Beads. Suddenly, the world around her darkened. The ground beneath her feet became cold and unforgiving, as if she had stepped into a different realm altogether. The air grew thick, pressing against her skin like an invisible force. Out of the darkness, a figure emerged, a tall, shadowed woman with eyes that glowed like embers. She was draped in flowing robes, her presence commanding and terrifying all at once. The woman's voice echoed through the air, soft yet powerful, like 1,000 whispers converging into one. "You, Asake, have crossed into a place you do not belong." Asake's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood her ground, refusing to be cowed by the strange figure before her. "I came for Adeloju," she said firmly. "I followed him here." The woman's gaze shifted to the floating skull, and a knowing smile crossed her lips. "Ah, yes, Adeloju, the one who takes what isn't his." Without another word, the woman raised her hand, and in an instant, Asake felt something tighten around her waist. She looked down and saw a shimmering string of waist beads wrapping around her, glowing faintly in the darkness. They constricted with every breath she took, as if alive, as if binding her to this strange place. "You have bound yourself to him," the woman said, her voice cold and unyielding. "And now you will remain bound until you break the spell." Asake struggled against the beads, but they would not give way. It was as though they had a life of their own, their energy pulsing against her skin. She looked up at the woman, her voice shaking. "How do I break the spell?" The woman's eyes gleamed with something akin to amusement, as though she had been waiting for this very question. "The spell is not mine to break," she said. "It is yours. But know this, the beads will tighten with every step you take away from the truth. Only by facing what lies ahead can you free yourself." With that, the woman turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving Asake alone in the dark with the floating skull of Adeloju and the strange glowing beads that bound her. Asake felt a rising panic as the beads continued to constrict, their power growing with each passing second. But even as fear gripped her heart, she knew she could not stop now. Her journey was far from over, and whatever lay ahead, she would face it head on. With a final glance at Adeloju's skull, Asake straightened her spine and stepped forward into the unknown, determined to find the answers that would set her free. Asake's first attempt to escape. The night was quiet, the moon casting pale light on the village and the surrounding forest. The once familiar sounds of the night now seemed eerie to Asake, trapped in her unwanted bond with Adeloju, the skull-headed creature who had deceived her. As she lay in the small, dimly lit hut, her mind raced with thoughts of escape. The waist beads jingled softly against her skin, a constant reminder of her captivity. She had heard their cursed sound many times since Adeloju had placed them on her. Every time she moved, the beads would betray her intentions, alerting him to her every step. But tonight, her desperation outweighed her fear. She could no longer bear to stay with the creature who had trapped her. She had to escape, even if it meant risking everything. Slowly, Asake rose from the straw mat on which she had been resting. She moved carefully, trying to muffle the sound of the waist beads. But despite her caution, they betrayed her as always, jingling with each step. Orio Asake Nlo. The sound seemed to echo through the air like a chant, calling to her captor. Adeloju's cold, hollow voice rose from the shadows. There is no escape, Asake. I told you. These beads bind you to me. You belong to me now. Asake froze, her heart racing in her chest. She had barely made it to the door before his presence overwhelmed her. Tears filled her eyes as the weight of her situation crashed down on her. She had followed him willingly, enchanted by his borrowed beauty, but now she was trapped in a nightmare with no clear way out. She could not remain here, yet every attempt to flee only brought her closer to despair. Lesson 1. The Power of Control Learning Point. Adeloju uses magical waist beads to control Asake and prevent her from escaping. Practical application. In unhealthy relationships or situations, there are often subtle forms of control and manipulation. Recognizing these early and understanding their impact is essential to breaking free from them. Lesson 2. Resilience in the face of adversity. Learning point. Despite the beads controlling her movements, Asake begins to think about escape and tests her limits. Practical application. Even when facing seemingly impossible odds, it's important to never give up hope. Resilience and determination can help overcome even the strongest shackles. Chapter 5. The Final Confrontation. Asake discovers the truth of the waist beads. Days passed, and Asake's hope grew dimmer with each failed attempt to escape. Adeloju, with his skeletal form and cursed power, seemed omnipresent, his influence tightening around her like the waist beads she could not remove. Every time she tried to flee, the beads would jingle, and his voice would follow, calling her back like a song of doom. But one evening, an old woman came to her in a dream. The woman's face was lined with the wisdom of many years, and her eyes, though kind, burned with intensity. Asake, the woman said softly, these waist beads are not as invincible as you believe. They are bound by the magic of the spirits. Yes, but that magic has a weakness. Asake knelt before the woman in her dream, desperate for answers. How do I free myself? The spell can be broken, the old woman continued, but only by you. These beads are connected to your heart, your will. Adeloju used deceit to claim you, but your spirit is stronger than his lies. The power to break free is in you, Asake. When you find the strength within, the beads will lose their hold. Asake woke up suddenly, her heart pounding. Could it be true? Could she break the spell herself? She decided to try. The next time she attempted to run, she did not do so out of fear or desperation. Instead, she focused inward, remembering the old woman's words. She thought of her strength, her will to live freely, and her refusal to be bound by deception. As she moved, the beads jingled again, but something was different this time. The sound seemed fainter, less menacing. She took another step, this time without fear, and the beads fell silent. Asake gasped. The spell was weakening. Breaking free from Adeloju's spell. With her new understanding of the bead's power, Asake moved with purpose. Each step she took, each breath she drew, was filled with the determination to free herself from Adeloju's grip. Adeloju appeared before her, his skeletal face twisting in rage. "You cannot leave me!" he roared. "We are bound, Asake! I warned you that you could not escape!" But Asake stood tall, facing him without fear for the first time since their journey began. "I no longer belong to you," she said firmly, her voice strong and steady. "Your power over me was built on deceit, but I see through it now. I will not be your captive any longer." Adeloju lunged toward her, his bony hands reaching out to grasp her. But as he moved, the waist beads glowed with a brilliant light, shimmering in defiance of his dark magic. With one final act of will, Asake tore the beads from her waist. They fell to the ground, shattering into 1,000 pieces, their jingle turning to silence. Adeloju let out a scream, a howl of frustration and defeat. His skeletal form crumbled before her eyes, dissolving into dust, carried away by the wind. His borrowed power, now fully returned to the spirits who had lent it, left him with nothing. Asake stood in the clearing, free at last. She looked down at the broken beads, a symbol of the power she had reclaimed for herself. Epilogue. The return to freedom. Asake returned to the village, but she was no longer the same woman who had once been enchanted by a stranger's beauty. She had faced the darkest of spirits, endured the weight of captivity, and emerged stronger than ever. The villagers who had once adored her beauty now saw something deeper in her, a quiet strength that could not be borrowed or stolen. She was free, and she would never be deceived again. As the story of Asake and Adeloju spread throughout the land, it was told in many different ways. Some said she had been saved by the spirits themselves, while others believed it was her courage that broke the spell. But in every version, one truth remained. Asake's heart had proven stronger than any magic, and in the end, she had reclaimed her freedom. Lesson 1. Breaking free from manipulation. Learning point. Asake discovers the secret behind the waist beads and uses this knowledge to break free from Adeloju's spell. Practical application. Knowledge is power. Understanding the mechanisms of control and manipulation can empower us to break free and reclaim our independence, whether in personal relationships or societal structures. Lesson 2. Self-awareness and discovery. Learning point. By learning the truth about the waist beads, Asake becomes aware of the control mechanisms being used against her. Practical application. Self-awareness is crucial in identifying when we are being manipulated or controlled. It is only through awareness that we can begin to take steps toward liberation. Lesson 3. Empowerment through action. Learning point. Armed with knowledge, Asake takes deliberate action to free herself from Adeloju's control. Practical application. True empowerment comes from taking action. Once we understand how we are being held back, we must actively seek to break free, whether from relationships, oppressive systems, or bad habits. Chapter 6. Lessons learned. The return to the village. As Asake made her way back to her village, her heart felt both light and heavy. She had freed herself from Adeloju's spell, but the journey had changed her forever. The vibrant marketplace where she once walked with grace, admired by many, now felt distant, as though the girl who had left was not the same one returning. When the villagers saw her, they rushed forward with joy, expecting the same youthful beauty they had admired for so long. But there was something different in her eyes, something wise, something cautious. She no longer craved the gifts and attention she had once entertained. Instead, Asake carried with her a deeper understanding of the masks people wear and the traps of superficial allure. The elder women of the village gathered around her, sensing that something significant had occurred. One of them, wise in the ways of old, gently placed a hand on Asake's shoulder. "What did you see, child? What have you learned?" Asake looked into the faces of her people, the men and women who had showered her with gifts and admiration, hoping to win her affection. She thought of Adeloju, the handsome stranger who had deceived her with his borrowed charms and false promises. "I have learned," she said, her voice steady but soft, "that beauty can be deceiving, and what is borrowed will always be returned." Asake reflects on her journey. In the quiet of the night, Asake sat by the fire, reflecting on everything she had experienced. She thought back to the moment she first met Adeloju in the marketplace, the instant attraction, the thrill of something new. He had appeared flawless, but she now understood that his perfection had been pieced together from the borrowed parts of others. The transformation that took place at Odo Aro and Odo Eje revealed his true nature, a deceiver, a creature bound by vanity and lies. As she looked into the flickering flames, Asake realized how easily she had fallen for the illusion, and it made her think of more than just her own story. The lesson was not hers alone, but a cautionary tale for the entire village, for her people, and for generations to come. The borrowed beauty that Adeloju had used to capture her heart reminded her of how people choose their leaders, how they are often drawn to those who appear strong and promising but are, in fact, hollow and false. Like Adeloju, many leaders are merely masquerades, adorned with borrowed intelligence and empty promises. Their true nature, much like the skull-headed creature she had followed, is often visible if only we choose to see it. "The signs were always there," Asake murmured to herself. "Just like Adeloju warned me in his riddles. But I ignored them, enchanted by what I wanted to believe, not what was real." Her thoughts drifted to the waist beads Adeloju had used to bind her. They were not just a symbol of her captivity, but also a metaphor for how easily people can be trapped by the things they value: beauty, power, wealth. The villagers' constant adoration of her physical beauty was not unlike the way people revered wealth and status, often blind to the deceit that lay beneath. She thought of the waist beads that jingled, alerting her captor whenever she tried to escape. They reminded her of the chains people place on themselves, sometimes without even realizing it. The way they worship material things, the way they follow leaders whose true intentions are masked by borrowed charisma and charm. Lesson 1. The importance of discernment in decision-making. Learning point. Asake reflects on her experience and the consequences of her hasty decision to follow Adeloju. She realizes the importance of looking beyond appearances and being discerning in her choices. Practical application. We must be discerning in our choices, whether in personal relationships or leadership. Appearances and charm are often fleeting, and true substance must be the deciding factor in important decisions. Lesson 2. Growth from adversity. Learning point. After escaping, Asake returns to her village wiser and more cautious. Practical application. Summary of The Dance and Shackle of Borrowed Crown. This story follows the journey of Asake, a beautiful and admired young woman in her village, and the consequences of her hasty attraction to a stranger named Adeloju. Asake is the object of desire for many, but none of the suitors appeal to her. However, during a visit to the marketplace, she meets Adeloju, a mysterious man who captivates her with his charm and striking appearance. Unbeknownst to her, his beauty and allure are borrowed from various spirits, and his true self remains hidden behind a mask. Despite Adeloju's cryptic warnings that his appearance may change, Asake insists on following him. As they journey beyond the marketplace, crossing the waters of Odo Aro and Odo Eje, Adeloju begins returning the borrowed costumes and revealing his true form. By the time they cross the second river, his handsomeness fades, and his real self, an ugly and terrifying skull, is revealed. Asake realizes she has been deceived, but by this point it is too late. She has bound herself to Adeloju. Adeloju Adeloju, now fully exposed as the skull-headed figure, traps Asake with enchanted waist beads to ensure she cannot escape. Each time she tries to run, the beads jingle, alerting him of her movements. The beads symbolize the power and control Adeloju holds over her, much like a captor ensuring their victim remains shackled. However, Asake soon discovers the truth behind the waist beads and begins to plan her escape. After several failed attempts, she finds a way to break free from Adeloju's spell, but the experience leaves her wiser and more cautious. Lessons for the future. Discernment. The story underscores the importance of looking beyond appearances, whether in choosing a life partner or a leader. Asake's attraction to Adeloju was based solely on his borrowed beauty, ignoring the warning signs of his true nature. This teaches that beauty, charm, and promises can be deceiving, and one must exercise discernment in making important decisions. Responsibility in choice. Asake's journey reflects the consequences of her choices, emphasizing that decisions, whether in personal relationships or governance, come with significant responsibilities. Just as she was lured by Adeloju's external allure, people must be cautious when choosing leaders, ensuring their decisions are based on values, substance, and character, rather than superficial charm. Temporary nature of power. Adeloju's borrowed beauty serves as a metaphor for leadership without integrity. His appearance was temporary, fading away as the borrowed parts were returned, leaving only his true form. This highlights how power that is built on deception, lies, or borrowed strength will eventually crumble. True leadership must be built on a solid foundation, or it will be fragile and short-lived. Conclusion. The dance and shackle of borrowed crown draws a parallel between Asake's deceptive journey and the political reality of selecting leaders based on empty promises. The story imparts valuable lessons in discernment, responsibility, and accountability, serving as a cautionary tale about the significance of making informed and thoughtful choices, whether in personal relationships or in electing those who lead. Tailored for youth, the narrative encourages critical thinking and highlights the long-term impact of decisions. With its poetic resonance, the title is well suited for adaptation into storybooks or animated series that aim to teach these important life lessons.